The red warning lights flashed across the bridge of the human ship New Soul. Sparks flew from broken control panels as the vessel shook under enemy fire. Kang Ho pressed his hands against his bleeding forehead and tried to focus on the communications. A ray in front of him. "Captain Park!" he called out over the noise of explosions. "The main transmitter is still working, but barely." Captain Park Mina gripped the command chair as another blast rocked the ship. Through the cracked view screen, she could see the dark shapes of alien vessels closing in. They looked like giant insects with metal wings and glowing red eyes. The Vrakti had been hunting human ships for weeks now, and this time they had found the New Soul far from any help. "How long until the engines come back online?" Park Mina shouted to the engineering station. Yoon Jae looked up from his repairs, sweat dripping down his face. "At least 20 minutes, Captain. Maybe more." The power core took a direct hit. 20 minutes they did not have. The Vrakti ships were already preparing for another attack. Park Mina had seen what happened to other human vessels. The aliens would tear the ship apart piece by piece, taking what they wanted and leaving nothing behind. "Lee Hanna!" she called to the medic who was treating wounded crew members in the corner. "How many people can we move?" 15 are badly hurt, Lee Hanna replied without looking up from her patient. "They cannot walk on their own." Park Mina closed her eyes for a moment. She had to make a choice no captain ever wanted to make. She could try to run and maybe save some of her crew, or she could stay and fight knowing they would all die. But then she remembered something her grandfather had told her long ago. When faced with impossible odds, sometimes the best choice was to ask for help. "Kang Ho," she said firmly, "can you reach beyond our solar system with the transmitter?" The communications officer checked his instruments. "Maybe, if I boost the power and use the emergency channels. But Captain, there is no one out there. We have been alone in space for so long." "Not alone," Park Mina said. "We have been listening to radio signals from distant stars for years. Someone is out there, and maybe they will listen to us." She moved to stand behind Kang Ho at his station. "Send a message on all frequencies. Tell them who we are and where we are. Tell them we need help." Kang Ho's fingers moved quickly across the controls. "What should I say exactly, Captain?" Park Mina thought for a moment as explosions echoed around them. "Tell them we are humans from Earth. Tell them we are under attack by creatures that want to destroy everything we have built. Tell them we have families, children, dreams just like they might have, and tell them that if they do not help us, the same creatures might come for them next." "Yes, Captain." Kang Ho began typing the message. "Should I explain about our planet?" "Yes. Tell them about Earth. Tell them it is a hard world where storms can kill and the ground shakes. Tell them about our oceans that can swallow ships and our mountains that touch the sky. Tell them we learned to survive there, and that is why we will not give up fighting." The ship shook again as the Vrakti moved closer. Through the damaged view screen, Park Mina could see more of their ships arriving. Soon there would be dozens of them. "Message is ready, Captain," Kang Ho reported. "Send it. Send it now, and keep sending it until the transmitter dies." The message went out into the darkness of space, traveling faster than light toward distant stars. It carried the voices of humans who refused to surrender, even when death was coming for them. Far away, in a place where the stars were different colors and strange beings lived in floating cities, something heard the call. The Galactic Council monitoring station was quiet that day. Most of the technicians were taking their rest period, leaving. Only a few beings to watch the communication arrays. They were used to hearing signals from across the galaxy, trade requests, scientific data, messages between friends on different worlds. But this signal was different. Veltar of the Xanathi. People was reviewing routine reports when the emergency alert sounded. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin, and large eyes that could see many colors humans could not. His people were known for being peaceful and wise. "What is the source of this signal?" he asked the technician, a small furry creature from the Makari system. "Unknown, Counselor Veltar. It comes from the outer edge of the galaxy. The translation systems are having trouble with the language." Veltar moved to look at the display screen. Strange symbols scrolled past, slowly changing into words he could understand as the computers worked to decode them. "We are humans from the planet Earth. Our world is under attack by hostile forces calling themselves the Vrakti Swarm. We have tried to defend ourselves, but we are outnumbered. Our ships are being destroyed, and our people are dying. We send this message hoping that someone, somewhere, will hear us and help us." Veltar read the message again, then looked at the star charts. "Where is this Earth?" The technician's claws clicked on his keyboard. "According to our records, it is in a system we catalog as Sol 3. But, Counselor, there is a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Our science teams surveyed that system 300 years ago. They marked the third planet as a Class 12 death world. No intelligent life should be able to survive there." Veltar frowned. A Class 12 death world was among the most dangerous places in the galaxy. Such planets had extreme weather, dangerous animals, poisonous air, or other conditions that would kill most known species within hours. "Perhaps the survey was wrong," Veltar suggested. "Or perhaps this is some kind of trick," the technician replied. "The Vrakti might be trying to lure our ships into a trap." But Veltar continued reading the message. It contained detailed information about human biology, their technology, their culture. It spoke of a species that had learned to survive on a world of constant danger. It described people who worked together, who protected their families, who never gave up hope even when everything seemed lost. "Counselor," the technician said nervously, "what should we do? Council policy says we do not investigate signals from death worlds." Veltar was quiet for a long moment. His people believed that all life was precious, that every thinking being deserved a chance to live and grow, but the council was made up of many species, and not all of them shared this belief. "Call an emergency meeting," he decided. "All council members must hear this message, even though it comes from a death world, especially because it comes from a death world. If these humans are real, if they truly exist and have built a civilization on such a dangerous planet, then they might be the most remarkable species we have ever encountered." The technician sent out the call, and within hours, representatives from dozens of worlds had gathered in the Great Council chamber. Some appeared in person, others as glowing holograms projected across vast distances of space. Veltar stood before them and played the human message. As the desperate words filled the chamber, he watched the faces of his fellow council members. Some looked skeptical. Others seemed frightened. A few appeared curious. "This is obviously false," declared Corax of the hegemony, a large reptilian being with sharp teeth. "No species could survive on a Class 12 death world, let alone develop space travel." "Even if they exist," added Thessera of the Crystal Collective, "why should we risk our ships to help them? The Vrakti are dangerous. We have managed to avoid conflict with them by staying out of their way." But Zephyr of the Windborn disagreed. "If this Vrakti swarm is expanding their territory, they may eventually threaten us all. Perhaps we should investigate." The debate continued for hours. Some council members wanted to ignore the message completely. Others suggested sending a small probe to observe from a safe distance. A few even proposed that if humans really existed on a death world, they might be too dangerous to contact. Finally, Veltar spoke again. "I volunteer to lead a small fleet to investigate. We do not need to engage in combat. We will simply observe and report back." "And if it is a trap," Corax demanded, "then I will send a warning before the Vrakti destroy my ships." "But if these humans are real, if they are truly fighting alone against an enemy that might someday threaten us all, then we owe them at least the chance to be heard." The vote was close, but Veltar's proposal was accepted. Within days, a small fleet of council ships was prepared for the long journey to the Sol system. As they departed, the human message continued to broadcast across space, a cry for help from a species that refused to surrender even in the face of certain death. The journey to the Sol system took Veltar's fleet 2 weeks. During this time, they received more human transmissions. The messages were getting weaker, more desperate. Sometimes they would cut off suddenly, only to resume hours later from a different location. "They are losing," observed Commander Theiss, Veltar's second-in-command. She was from the aquatic Nereid people and needed to wear a water-filled helmet to breathe. "Each message comes from fewer ships." Veltar studied the star charts on his command screen. According to their instruments, the Sol system contained 8 planets orbiting a medium-sized yellow star. The third planet, Earth, was the only one in the habitable zone where liquid water could exist. "Sensors are picking up something," reported the navigation officer, a multi-armed being called Nexus 7. "There are energy signatures ahead. Many of them." "Vrakti ships?" Veltar asked. "Some match Vrakti patterns, but others are unknown. The unknown signatures are smaller but moving in complex formations." As they approached the outer edge of the Sol system, the truth became clear. Through their viewing screens, space was filled with wreckage, twisted metal, burning debris, and the dark hulks of destroyed vessels. But the battle was still raging. Veltar had never seen anything like it. The Vrakti ships were enormous, each one the size of a small city. Their black hulls were covered in sharp spikes and weapon ports. They moved through space like hungry predators, firing bright red energy beams that could cut through most known armor. But the human ships were different. They were much smaller, built for speed rather than size. As Veltar watched, a group of human fighters dove between two Vrakti dreadnoughts, their engines leaving bright blue trails in the darkness. "Look at their tactics," whispered Commander Thys. "They are using the asteroid belt as cover." She was right. Kim Day, piloting one of the human fighters, led his squadron through a field of spinning rocks. The massive Vrakti ships could not follow without damaging themselves, but the smaller human craft moved between the asteroids like fish swimming through coral. "Impossible," breathed the navigation officer. "The gravitational forces in that asteroid field would crush most pilots. How are they calculating those trajectories so quickly?" Veltar leaned forward in his command chair. Kim Day's fighter had just used the gravity of a large asteroid to slingshot around behind a Vrakti cruiser. The maneuver happened in seconds, but it must have required split-second timing and perfect understanding of physics. "These humans," Veltar said slowly. "They fight like they were born in space." But the most surprising thing was happening on the third planet itself. Earth's surface was covered in clouds and blue oceans, with brown and green land masses visible between them. According to the Council's old survey, this planet should have been too dangerous for civilization. Yet as they watched, massive defense platforms rose from the planet's surface. Energy shields flickered to life around the major continents, and coordinating it all was Choi Su from her command center deep beneath Earth's largest city. "All defense grids are online," Choi Su reported to her team. Her voice was calm, despite the chaos around her. Above them, Vrakti dropships were trying to break through Earth's atmosphere, but the humans had turned their dangerous world into a fortress. "The Arctic stations are reporting severe weather moving in," called one of her officers. "Should we delay the northern strike?" "No," Choi Su replied firmly. "Use the storm. The Vrakti hate cold and their sensors cannot see through ice crystals. Launch the attack when the blizzard hits their landing zones." Veltar's sensors picked up what happened next. The humans had somehow timed their counterattack to coincide with a massive storm system. As ice and snow battered the Vrakti forces, human ground troops emerged from hidden bases and struck with deadly precision. Leading one of these attacks was Yang Min, a human commander who moved his soldiers through terrain that would challenge most species even in peaceful conditions. They crossed frozen rivers, climbed ice-covered cliffs, and fought battles in temperatures that would kill most Council species within minutes. "Commander," Nexus 7 reported, his voice filled with confusion, "the human ground forces are fighting in conditions that our environmental suits rate as lethal. How are they still alive?" Veltar had no answer. According to every scientific model the Council possessed, the surface of Earth should have been uninhabitable. The gravity was too strong, the weather too violent, the atmospheric pressure too high. Yet not only were humans surviving on this world, they were using its dangers as weapons. As the battle continued, Veltar's fleet maintained their distance and observed. They watched human ships perform maneuvers that defied their understanding of physics and biology. They saw human soldiers fight in conditions that would kill other species instantly. They witnessed tactical decisions made so quickly that their own computers could barely track them. But most shocking of all was what happened when a Vrakti battleship managed to break through Earth's defenses and crash land on the planet's surface. The ship had come down in what the humans called the Amazon rainforest, a region of thick jungle and dangerous wildlife. The Vrakti, expecting to find easy prey, instead found themselves trapped in a green hell where every plant seemed designed to kill and every animal was a potential threat. The humans did not even need to send soldiers. The jungle itself fought. The invaders. Their world is fighting with them, Commander Thys observed in amazement as they watched the Vrakti struggle against Earth's hostile environment. It is as if the planet itself is alive and angry. But it was not just the environment that made humans dangerous. As Veltar's fleet continued to observe, they began to understand something else about these creatures. When a human ship was damaged and about to be destroyed, other human ships would risk everything to rescue the survivors. When human soldiers were trapped behind enemy lines, their comrades would launch suicide missions to bring them home. When human civilians were threatened, the entire species seemed to unite in their defense. They fight for each other, Veltar realized. Not just for territory or resources, they actually care about individual lives. This was almost unknown among galactic species. Most civilizations fought when they had to, but few would risk their own lives for strangers. The idea that an entire species would work together so completely was revolutionary. As the days passed, Veltar began to understand that the Council had been wrong about everything. Earth was not just a death world, it was a forge where an entire species had been shaped into something unique and powerful. The humans had not conquered their hostile planet. They had learned to work with it, to use its dangers as strengths, to turn its challenges into advantages. They had become something that the galaxy had never seen before. And they were winning. The Vrakti, who had conquered dozens of civilized worlds, were being pushed back by creatures they had dismissed as primitive. Every day brought new defeats for the swarm. Ships that had never known fear were fleeing from human fighters. Ground forces that had crushed armies across the galaxy were being outmaneuvered by human soldiers who treated impossible terrain as their natural home. "Counselor Veltar," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving a direct transmission from the humans. They know we are here." "Can they see us?" Veltar asked. His ships were supposed to be invisible to most sensors. "Unknown, but the message is directed specifically at our position." Veltar nodded. "Put it through." A new voice filled the command bridge. Strong, confident, and speaking the galactic common language with only a slight accent. "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Park Mina of the Human Defense Fleet. We detected your ships 3 days ago. We know you are not Vrakti, and we hope you are not hostile. If you are here to observe, you are welcome to do so. If you are here to help, we could use all the assistance we can get. If you are here to evaluate whether humans are a threat to galactic peace, well, judge for yourselves." The transmission ended, leaving Veltar's bridge in silence. "They knew we were here all along," Commander Thys said quietly. "Even while fighting for their lives, they were watching us." Veltar looked at the tactical display showing the ongoing battle. Human ships continued their impossible maneuvers. Human soldiers kept fighting in lethal conditions, and human commanders made decisions that saved lives even while winning victories. "Send a reply," he ordered. "Tell them we are observers from the Galactic Council. Tell them we came in response to their distress signal." "What else should we say?" the communications officer asked. Veltar considered this. What could he say to a species that had turned survival on a death world into an art form? What words could express his growing realization that the Council had been wrong about almost everything? "Tell them," he said finally, "that we are honored to witness their courage." As his message was sent, Veltar continued to watch the battle unfold. With each passing hour, he became more certain that the galaxy was about to change forever. The humans were not just fighting for their own survival. They were proving that there were new ways to live, new ways to fight, and new ways to face the darkness between the stars. And judging by what he had seen so far, the galaxy was not ready for what humanity would become. The real shock came when Veltar's fleet moved closer to observe the ground battles. What they discovered challenged everything the Galactic Council thought they knew about warfare, biology, and survival. Otai had been fighting for 3 days, straight without rest. His unit was defending a mountain pass that led to one of Earth's major cities. The Vrakti had been trying to break through for 72 hours, sending wave after wave of their warrior drones up the rocky slopes. "How is this possible?" Commander Thiss asked, as they watched the human soldier continue fighting. Our medical experts say that most galactic species would collapse from exhaustion after 12 hours of combat. Veltar studied the readings from their advanced sensors. Otai's heart rate was elevated but steady. His brain activity showed he was still making tactical decisions quickly and accurately. His muscle function remained strong despite the long battle. Look at his equipment, Nexus 7 pointed out. He is carrying weapons and armor that weigh more than some council species. How can he even move? But Otai was not just moving. He was running across terrain that would challenge most beings even without equipment. The mountain pass was filled with loose rocks, steep cliffs, and patches of ice that could send anyone tumbling to their death. Yet the human soldier moved across it like it was his natural home. As they watched, a group of Vrakti drones finally managed to reach Otai's position. The aliens were each twice his size, with natural armor plating and claws that could tear through metal. But Otai did not retreat. Instead, he did something that made the council observers gasp in surprise. He grabbed one of the loose rocks from the mountainside and threw it with such force that it shattered the first drone's head. Then he rolled behind a boulder as the others opened fire, using the mountain itself as both weapon and shield. He is fighting like the mountain is part of his body, Veltar observed, as if he knows exactly how every rock will move, where every piece of ice will break. The battle continued, and Otai kept fighting. When his ammunition ran low, he made weapons from stones and metal debris. When his armor was damaged, he used mud and snow to camouflage himself. When the Vrakti tried to outflank him, he led them into areas where avalanches or rock slides would crush them. But the truly amazing thing was not just his endurance, it was his mind. After 3 days without sleep, Otai was still thinking. Clearly, still making plans, still finding new ways to turn his dangerous environment into an advantage. This is impossible, Commander Thiss whispered. Sleep deprivation should have made him unable to function hours ago. The answer came when they observed other human soldiers. Shin Nara was leading a squad through a chemical plant that the Vrakti had contaminated with poisonous gas. The aliens expected the toxic fumes to kill any humans who tried to retake the facility. Instead, they watched Shin Nara and her team put on simple breathing masks and march straight through the poisoned area. The chemicals that would have killed most council species in minutes seemed to barely slow the humans down. Run a comparison scan, Veltar ordered his science officer. What is in that gas cloud? Carbon monoxide, sulfur compounds, and several organic toxins, came the reply. The concentration should be lethal to any carbon-based life form. But the humans are not dying. No, Counselor. In fact, their body chemistry seems to be processing the toxins and neutralizing them. It is as if they have natural resistance to poisons. Veltar began to understand. These humans had not just survived on a death world, they had evolved to thrive in conditions that would kill other species. Their bodies were designed to handle toxins, extreme temperatures, radiation, and physical stress that would be fatal to more civilized beings. But their greatest weapon was not their physical abilities, it was their minds. Bei Jin was demonstrating this as he led a psychological warfare campaign against a Vrakti command center. The Vrakti were known for their hive mind intelligence, where all individuals shared thoughts and emotions. They had never encountered a species that could manipulate their mental state. Bei Jin had figured out how to disrupt their communications with carefully timed electronic attacks. But more than that, he had learned to use fear as a weapon. The Vrakti had conquered many worlds by being the most frightening thing their enemies could imagine. They relied on terror to break the will of their opponents before battles even began. But humans, who had grown up on a world filled with natural predators, extreme weather, and constant danger, were not easily frightened. Instead, Bei Jin turned the tables. He had his teams create sounds that mimicked Earth's most dangerous predators. The roar of great cats, the hiss of venomous snakes, the calls of hunting birds. To humans, these were familiar sounds from their home world. But to the Vrakti, who came from a sterile hive world, they were the stuff of nightmares. The Vrakti are actually retreating, Nexus 7 reported in amazement. They are running from sounds. Not just sounds, Veltar corrected. They are running from the promise of something worse than themselves. This human has made them afraid. As the days passed, Veltar's team documented more and more examples of human abilities that seemed impossible. They watched human medics treat injuries that should have been fatal, using knowledge gained from centuries of dealing with their world's dangers. They saw human engineers repair damaged equipment in conditions that would kill most species, working with tools and materials that other civilizations would consider primitive. But perhaps most shocking was their capacity for sacrifice. When a Vrakti battleship broke through Earth's orbital defenses and began bombarding a human city, the response was immediate. Dozens of human pilots launched their fighters knowing it was a suicide mission. They had no chance of destroying such a massive enemy ship, but they attacked anyway. Veltar watched in stunned silence as the human fighters rammed themselves into the battleship's weapon ports, disabling its guns one by one. Each impact destroyed both the fighter and its pilot, but it also saved thousands of civilian lives on the planet below. "Why?" Commander Thys asked, her voice filled with confusion. "Why would they throw their lives away like that? They could have retreated and lived to fight another day." "Because," Veltar said slowly, "they are not fighting for victory. They are fighting for each other." This was the key to understanding humans, he realized. Other species fought for territory, resources, or dominance. But humans fought for something more abstract and more powerful. They fought for the idea that every individual life had value. As the observation mission continued, Veltar began compiling a report for the Galactic Council. But he knew that words would never capture what he had witnessed. How could he explain that these primitive Deathworlders were demonstrating tactical brilliance that surpassed the Council's greatest military minds? How could he describe their ability to make split-second decisions under pressure that would paralyze other species for hours? How could he convey their willingness to sacrifice themselves for strangers, their capacity to find hope in hopeless situations, their talent for turning every disadvantage into an advantage? The humans were not just surviving against the Vrakti, they were winning. And they were doing it in ways that challenged every assumption the galaxy had ever made about warfare, survival, and civilization. Counselor, his communications officer, reported, "We are receiving another transmission from the human command." "From Captain Park Mina?" "No, sir. This one identifies herself as Admiral Song Q of the Earth Defense Forces." Veltar was surprised. In just a few days, the humans had promoted new leaders and reorganized their military structure. Most species would have needed months to make such changes during a crisis. "Put her through," he ordered. The voice that filled the bridge was calm and confident, speaking with the authority of someone who had just won a major victory. "Council observers, this is Admiral Song Q. We have successfully repelled the Vrakti advance on our inner system. Their main fleet is retreating, and our forces are pursuing them to ensure they do not regroup. We want you to know that your presence here has been noted and appreciated. When this battle is over, we would welcome the opportunity to establish formal contact with your Galactic Council." The transmission paused, then continued. "We also want you to understand something important. The Vrakti came to our world expecting to find easy prey. They thought that because we live on what you call a death world, we must be weak or primitive. They were wrong. Our world did not make us weak. It made us strong. It taught us to survive, to adapt, to never give up no matter how bad things become." Another pause, and when the voice returned, it carried a note of warning. "The Vrakti will likely try to attack other worlds now that they have been defeated here. When they do, they will be angry and desperate. We wanted to offer our assistance to any species that might need help defending themselves. We humans have experience fighting creatures like the Vrakti." The message ended, leaving Veltar's bridge in stunned silence. "They are offering to help defend other worlds?" Commander Thys asked. "After everything they have just been through?" Veltar nodded slowly. These humans had just fought off an invasion that would have destroyed most civilizations. They had lost ships, soldiers, and civilians. Their cities were damaged, and their resources were strained. The tide of battle turned completely when the humans began using their most terrifying weapon, their planet itself. Nam Sung stood on the bridge of the orbital defense station Terra Guard, watching as massive Vrakti reinforcements arrived at the edge of the solar system. The enemy had brought their entire war fleet, hundreds of ships that had conquered dozens of worlds. They were coming for revenge, and this time they would not underestimate humanity. "Admiral," reported the tactical officer, "enemy fleet strength is now at 400 vessels. They are forming attack formations and moving toward Earth." Nam Sung studied the display calmly. The human fleet had only 60 ships left after days of fighting. By any logical measure, this should be the end of human resistance. But Nam Sung had grown up on Earth, where logic often took second place to determination. "What is the status of the solar weather monitoring system?" he asked. "Solar activity is increasing rapidly, sir. The star is building toward a major flare event. Estimated time until peak intensity is 6 hours. Nam Sung smiled. The Vrakti had made the mistake of attacking during solar maximum when Earth's sun was at its most active. They had no idea what that meant. "Send a message to all human ships and ground stations," he ordered. "Operation Solar Storm is now in effect. All vessels are to begin gravitational anchor procedures. Ground forces should seek deep shelter immediately." The human fleet began moving into position around Earth, using the planet's gravity and magnetic field to anchor themselves in preparation for what was coming. Meanwhile, the Vrakti fleet continued its approach, confident that their overwhelming numbers would ensure victory. They had never fought an enemy that could weaponize a star. As the solar flare reached its peak, Nam Sung gave the order. Hidden. Satellites throughout the solar system began broadcasting powerful electromagnetic pulses, carefully timed to coincide with the natural solar radiation. The combined effect was like turning their sun into a massive weapon. The electromagnetic storm that followed disabled half the Vrakti fleet instantly. Their ships, designed for fighting in the stable space between stars, had no protection against the incredible energies that Earth's inhabitants dealt with regularly. But Nam Sung was not finished. As the enemy fleet struggled to recover, he activated Phase 2 of his plan. "All stations, begin orbital debris acceleration. Target the enemy fleet formations." What happened next would be talked about in galactic military academies for centuries. The humans had learned to use the natural debris in their solar system, asteroids, comets, even space dust, as weapons. By using Earth's magnetic field and carefully placed gravity generators, they turned the seemingly empty space around their world into a minefield. Chunks of rock and ice, accelerated to incredible speeds, began smashing into the disabled Vrakti ships. The aliens found themselves under attack by the solar system itself, but the most devastating blow came from an unexpected source. Ryu Hai had been working on a project that most species would have considered insane. As Earth's leading expert on dangerous wildlife, she had been training the planet's most lethal creatures to fight alongside human forces. When Vrakti ground troops finally managed to land on Earth's surface, they expected to face human soldiers in familiar combat. Instead, they found themselves fighting an entire ecosystem that had been turned against them. In the tropical regions, Ryu Hae had worked with local populations to train massive predatory birds to attack Vrakti aircraft. The alien sensors could track human-made weapons, but they were not programmed to detect threats from Earth's native wildlife. In the Arctic zones, she had learned to work with the planet's great white bears, creatures that weighed over 1,000 pounds and feared nothing. The Vrakti warriors, used to fighting on sterile worlds with predictable enemies, were completely unprepared for opponents that hunted by instinct and attacked without warning. But perhaps most terrifying were the ocean campaigns. The Vrakti had tried to establish underwater bases, thinking the humans would be unable to fight effectively beneath the waves. They had not realized that Earth's oceans were filled with predators that made their own warriors look gentle. Ryu Hai had spent years learning to communicate with Earth's great sea hunters, creatures with tentacles that could crush metal, electrical, abilities that could disable technology, and intelligence that surpassed many galactic species. When the Vrakti entered Earth's waters, they found themselves facing opponents that had ruled the planet's oceans for millions of years. "Status report from all theaters," Admiral Song Q requested from her command center deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. The reports that came back painted a picture of total Vrakti defeat. In the air, on the land, and in the seas, the invaders were being systematically destroyed by forces they could not understand or predict. But the most impressive display was yet to come. Lim Young had been developing a defense system that used Earth's most abundant resource. its violent weather. Unlike most civilized worlds, where weather was controlled and predictable, Earth's climate was a constantly changing weapon. As the largest Vrakti assault force prepared to attack the human capital cities, Lim Young put his plan into action. Using a network of atmospheric processors hidden around the globe, he began to manipulate the planet's weather patterns on a massive scale. The Vrakti found themselves trying to fight in conditions that changed every few minutes. First came tornadoes that could tear their aircraft apart, then freezing storms that locked their ground vehicles in ice, lightning strikes that were somehow directed with impossible accuracy, floods that appeared from nowhere to sweep away entire formations. How are they controlling the weather? The Vrakti commander demanded of his science officers. This is impossible. Weather is a natural force that cannot be weaponized. But the Vrakti had never encountered a species that lived with dangerous weather every day of their lives. To humans, storms were not disasters to be avoided. They were resources to be managed and used. As the battle raged around the globe, something else was happening that would prove even more significant. The humans were learning from their enemies. Every destroyed Vrakti ship was studied and analyzed. Every piece of alien technology was reverse-engineered and improved. Every tactical mistake the invaders made was cataloged and shared with human forces across the planet. But more than that, humans were adapting their strategies in real time, making changes to their battle plans faster than the Vrakti could respond. "Admiral," reported Captain Park Mina from her recovered ship, "we have successfully modified our weapons using Vrakti power cells. Our attack efficiency has increased by 40%. "Excellent," Admiral Song Q replied. "And the ground forces? They have learned to predict Vrakti movement patterns. Our soldiers are now anticipating enemy actions before they happen. The aliens cannot surprise us anymore." This was perhaps the most frightening thing about humans from the Vrakti perspective. Not only were these Deathworlders impossible to kill, not only could they turn their planet into a weapon, but they were getting better at fighting with every passing hour. The Vrakti had conquered other worlds by overwhelming them with superior numbers and firepower. But they had never faced an enemy that treated warfare like a learning experience, that improved their tactics in the middle of battle, that turned every defeat into information for the next victory. By the end of the week, the greatest Vrakti war fleet in history was in full retreat. Ships that had never known defeat were fleeing from a single planet whose inhabitants they had dismissed as primitive. But the humans were not content to simply drive off the invaders. "All pursuit squadrons, this is Admiral Song Q," came the transmission to the human fleet chasing the retreating Vrakti. "Your orders are to ensure that this threat is permanently eliminated. The Vrakti must not be allowed to attack other worlds. We have experience fighting them now. Other species do not." What followed was the systematic destruction of the Vrakti war machine. Human ships, fighting with technology upgraded from captured alien equipment, hunted down the retreating enemy forces with ruthless efficiency. The Vrakti, who had spent 1,000 years as the galaxy's most feared predators, suddenly found themselves as prey. Within days, news of the human victory began spreading across the galaxy. Species that had lived in terror of Vrakti expansion could barely believe the reports. The Hegemony Military Command studied the battle records and declared them impossible. The Crystal Collective's greatest scholars announced that the humans must have used some form of unknown superweapon. The Windborne fleet commanders demanded to know how a primitive species had defeated enemies that their own forces had avoided for centuries. But Veltar, returning to the Galactic Council with his detailed observations, knew the truth was both simpler and more complex than anyone imagined. The humans had not won because of superior technology or secret weapons. They had won because they were fundamentally different from every other species in the galaxy. Where other civilizations sought to control their environment, humans had learned to work with it. Where other species tried to eliminate risk and danger, humans had learned to use them as tools. Where other cultures developed technology to make life easier, humans had developed technology to make life more effective. 6 months after the Vrakti defeat, the Galactic Council chambers had never been so crowded. Representatives from every known species had gathered to witness something that had never happened before in galactic history: the formal introduction of a Deathworld species to civilized space. Veltar stood before the Great Assembly, preparing to present his final report on humanity. Around him, beings from 1,000 different worlds waited to learn about the species that had accomplished the impossible. "Honorable counselors," Veltar began, I have spent 6 months observing the species known as humans from the planet Earth. What I discovered challenges every assumption our civilization has made about warfare, survival, and the nature of intelligence itself. The chamber was silent as Veltar activated the holographic display. Images of Earth appeared, a blue and brown world covered in clouds, with land masses that showed green forests, brown deserts, and white polar ice caps. Earth is indeed a Class 12 death world, he continued. But we were wrong to assume that this made it uninhabitable. Instead, the extreme conditions of this planet forged a species unlike any we have encountered. The images changed to show human cities, vast structures of metal and glass rising from landscapes that would kill most galactic species. But more impressive than the cities were their inhabitants. Humans do not merely survive on their dangerous world, Veltar explained. They thrive there. They have turned every aspect of their hostile environment into a strength. He showed footage of humans working in conditions that would require protective suits for other species. But these Deathworlders moved freely through extreme temperatures, toxic atmospheres, and dangerous terrain. But the most important part of his presentation was yet to come. The defeat of the Vrakti was not an accident or a lucky victory, Veltar declared. It was the inevitable result of contact between the galaxy's most experienced predators and a species that evolved to face worse threats every day of their lives. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives argued that humans were too dangerous to contact. Others insisted that such powerful beings should be recruited as allies. A few suggested that humanity should be quarantined on their death world to prevent them from disrupting galactic civilization. But before the debate could continue, the chamber's communication system activated. "Honorable council members," came a clear voice speaking perfect galactic standard language. "This is Song Q of Earth. We request permission to address your assembly." The great doors of the council chamber opened, and for the first time in galactic history, representatives from a death world entered civilized space. Song Q walked calmly into the chamber, flanked by other humans whose mere presence caused whispers throughout the assembly. These beings looked small compared to some galactic species, but there was something about them that commanded attention. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. Their eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, taking in every detail and assessing every potential threat. Even in the peaceful council chamber, they remained alert and ready. But what struck the assembly most was their obvious intelligence. As Song Q approached the speaking platform, her gaze met that of each major representative, reading their body language and expressions with an accuracy that made many uncomfortable. "Honorable counselors," Song Q began, "we come before you, not as supplicants seeking aid, but as equals offering partnership." She activated her own holographic display, showing images that made the assembly gasp. Human ships moved through space with grace and power that exceeded anything in the galactic fleet. Human soldiers fought in conditions that would challenge the Council's best warriors. Human cities thrived on a world that should have been uninhabitable. "We understand that our origins make some of you nervous," Song Q continued. "Yes, we come from what you call a death world. Yes, we are capable of violence that disturbs your civilized sensibilities. But we want you to understand something important about humanity." The images changed to show humans rescuing survivors from disaster sites, sharing resources with those in need, and working together to solve problems that affected their entire species. "We did not survive on our dangerous world by becoming monsters. We survived by learning to protect each other. Everything we have accomplished, our technology, our tactics, our victories, was achieved because we refused to abandon anyone who needed help." A representative from the peaceful Xanathi rose to speak. "But surely your violent nature makes you unsuitable for galactic society. How can we trust a species that wages war so effectively?" Song Q's expression remained calm. "Because we wage war to protect peace. The Vrakti were destroyers who consumed entire worlds. We stopped them not because we enjoy fighting, but because no one else could." She gestured to Ansera, who stepped forward carrying a datapad. "Dr. Ansera, our lead xenobiologist, has been studying the various species of the galaxy. Her findings might interest you." Sarah activated her display, showing detailed biological and psychological profiles of dozens of galactic species. The accuracy and depth of her analysis made many representatives uncomfortable. "We have learned much about our galactic neighbors in the past 6 months," Sarah explained. "Your species have achieved remarkable things, art, philosophy, technology, that surpasses our own in many areas. But you have also become comfortable." The word hung in the air like an accusation. "Your worlds are safe and predictable. Your lives are long and peaceful. Your conflicts are resolved through discussion and compromise. These are wonderful achievements, but they have also made you vulnerable to predators like the Vrakti." Another representative, this one from the militaristic hegemony, stood to object. "Are you saying we are weak?" "Not weak," Sarah replied diplomatically. "Unprepared. You have created a civilization based on the assumption that everyone shares your values of peace and cooperation. When you encounter species that do not share those values, you have no effective response." Song Q resumed speaking. "This is why we offer partnership rather than membership. We know that many of you find us disturbing, even frightening. But we also know that the galaxy needs protectors who are not bound by civilized limitations." The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some species argued that humans were too dangerous to trust. Others insisted that humanity's military capabilities made them essential allies. A few suggested that the Deathworlders should be given responsibility for defending the galaxy's outer regions. Finally, Wu Chan, who had been introduced as humanity's military advisor, requested permission to speak. "Honorable counselors," he said, "you seem to think you have a choice about whether to include humanity in galactic civilization. But the choice has already been made." He activated a star map showing the current positions of human ships throughout the galaxy. "While you have been debating, we have been acting. Human vessels are already patrolling trade routes, investigating reports of Vrakti survivors, and establishing contact with species on the galactic rim who have never been represented in this council." The assembly buzzed with alarm. No one had given humans permission to expand beyond their solar system. "You see," Wu Chan continued calmly, "we learned something important from the Vrakti invasion. Threats to galactic peace do not wait for permission or formal authorization. They act when they are ready, and the only effective response is to be ready first." Song Q stepped forward again. "We are not asking for your approval to exist. We are offering to work with you to create a galaxy where species like the Vrakti cannot threaten innocent worlds. But if you prefer, we can work alone." The implied threat was clear. Humanity could become the galaxy's protectors with the Council's blessing, or they could become its guardians without official approval. Either way, they would do what they believed was necessary. The vote that followed was closer than many expected. Some species supported immediate human membership in the Council. Others argued for a probationary period. A few insisted that humanity should be contained on their home world. But in the end, pragmatism won over fear. By a vote of 712 to 438, announced the Council Speaker, humanity is granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with special status as protectors of the Rim. The title was unprecedented. No species had ever been given such broad authority to act independently in defense of galactic civilization. Song Q bowed formally to the assembly. "We accept this responsibility and this honor, but we want you to understand what this means." She gestured to her companions, scientists, soldiers, diplomats, and engineers who had traveled from the distant Death World to take their place among the stars. "Human ships will patrol the galaxy's dangerous regions. Human soldiers will respond to threats that your own forces cannot handle. Human scientists will study problems that your civilizations prefer to ignore. We will do the difficult, dangerous work that peaceful species cannot do themselves." As the formal ceremonies concluded and the various representatives began to disperse, Veltar approached the human delegation. "Admiral Song Q," he said, "may I ask you a personal question?" "Of course, Counselor Veltar. Your species has just achieved something remarkable. Acceptance into galactic civilization despite your violent origins. What do you hope to accomplish now?"